Welcome. The main purpose of this video is to detail how the game determines EXP amounts, but I'll also go over topics such as how to get Moonrise Towers Exploration EXP, why you should never reload a save on the Nautiloid, bugged EXP, obscure EXP that isn't actually bugged, and more. So if you're curious about EXP related quirks or how EXP works in general in Baldur's Gate 3, then I hope you'll enjoy this video. A few things of note before we start. This video was made during patch 8 hotfix number 35. If any of the bugs mentioned in this video happen to be fixed in the future, I'll note it in both the description and the comments. The content in this video is all stuff I've learned while working towards my main goal, which is optimizing a route to get as much EXP as possible in the first 2 acts of the game. So far, I've found enough EXP to comfortably get to level 12 with an extra 3,700 or so EXP beyond that. In this video, I'll only go over a few of the more complicated or noteworthy sources of EXP, but I've detailed every point of EXP I've found so far in a spreadsheet, which I've linked in the description for anyone interested in checking that out. Also, just to reiterate so I'm not setting any false expectations, everything in this video and on my sheets is limited to the first 2 acts of the game. Act 3 is out of my field of expertise. Before anyone asks, this video and all of my sheets ignore the infinite get coal farming bug because that totally defeats the purpose. Other smaller scale, finite bugs will be pointed out in this video. Shoutouts to SlimX for providing info from the files to help solve mysteries, bust myths, and turn speculation into fact. I can't thank him enough, and I highly recommend checking out his channel if you haven't already. Additional thanks to Unfinish for allowing me to use their music in this video. Links to both SlimX and Unfinish can be found in the description below. Also, if you'd like to discuss EXP-related topics further, head over to the Experience discussion thread found in the BG3 Act 1 Spoilers channel of the official Larian Discord. Now, with the intro out of the way, I'll go over EXP and what the game uses to determine how much to give you. Expect a few tangents along the way, though. There are 5 main ways to get EXP in Baldur's Gate 3. Inspiration EXP, EXP from completing quest objectives, EXP from killing your enemies, and your allies, and pretty much anyone other than your companions, EXP from peacefully talking your way through certain encounters, and then Exploration EXP, obtained from simply walking into specific areas around the map. Inspiration EXP is straightforward and, for better or for worse, doesn't have any quirks. Just in case someone has stumbled upon this video and isn't familiar with BG3, inspirations are something like mini achievements you can get during a run that give a little bit of EXP here and there. Each background has a unique set of inspirations available to it, thus the background that you start the game with determines which inspirations you can get during the run. Notably, Inspiration EXP is the only EXP in the game that is not shared amongst the whole party, so you only benefit from or care about the inspirations available to your main character's background. Not all backgrounds are created equal, however, and the top 2 that stand head and shoulders above the rest are Sage and the Haunted One, aka the Dark Urge, aka Dirge. Though with that said, Inspiration EXP accounts for a very small portion of the overall EXP you normally get in a run, like less than 1.5%. Next, Quest Step EXP is also pretty straightforward. In order for a quest step to give EXP, it needs to have both an EXP type and an area level designated to it in the files. If a step is missing either one, then it does not give any EXP. Most quest steps in the game fall under this category. For example, the quest to save Mayrina has 32 total steps, with only 7 giving EXP, and 3 of those are the various different mutually exclusive outcomes you can get. Any step with no description in the objective column is the final step of a quest, aka one of the ways to complete the quest, and looks like this in-game. Random fun fact, this quest step about attacking Mayrina's husband is labeled Fight Jake, so I guess his name went from Jake to Connor at some point during development. A quick note before we move on. All 4 of the ways to recruit Will have an EXP type, but no area level, so therefore recruiting him doesn't give any EXP. Unfortunately, I'm unsure if this is an oversight or if it's intended, but I'm leaning slightly towards intended since all 4 steps have the same issue. As for the EXP that NPCs give when defeated, that gets more complicated. When an NPC spawns into the game determines how much EXP they give using two things: the XPReward category they fall under and a level number. Then it gives EXP based on this handy chart you can find on the wiki. The XPReward category is a little more straightforward, so I'll go over that first. The short version is that the game checks that NPC's stat pages for an XPReward attribute. The long version is that NPCs usually have a few different stat pages, all linking to each other in sequence, and they eventually lead back to the default base stats page, which can be considered the lowest priority page. As a random example, looking at Ceres's data here, the first stat page it references is Den Refugees Tiefling Ranger, which can be considered the highest priority page. In this, it says using Tiefling Ranger, and that says using Tiefling, which uses Humanoid, which eventually uses the base. When a stat appears multiple times on different pages, only the one on the highest priority page is used. It effectively overwrites that stat on previous pages. The base page has XPReward set to Combatant, to clarify, so everything in the game defaults to Combatant, unless one of the other higher priority pages changes it to something else. In Ceres's case, none of her other pages mention XPReward, so therefore she uses the base's Combatant category. Here's an example where this is actually relevant. If we look at the Death Shepherd's data, the first thing it links to is Skeleton Giant Cultist Merkel Death Shepherd, which then uses Skeleton Giant, which uses Skeleton, which uses Undead, which finally uses base. Partway through this chain, the Skeleton page here changes the XPReward stat to the Pack category, and then it's never changed from that after. This is why you'll find that the Death Shepherds give less EXP than a random miscellaneous ghoul in the same fight, because the Skeleton page has adjusted their XPReward to the Pack category, and then neither the Skeleton Giant nor the Skeleton Giant Cultist Merkel Death Shepherd page has an XPReward attribute to adjust it beyond that. So the TLDR is that the highest priority XPReward stat determines the NPC's XPReward category. Next, moving on to the level number I mentioned. I worded it as such because it is not just an NPC's current level. Instead, the game checks both their current level and the area level of the area that they spawn into, if there is one, and uses the higher of these two numbers. This is why Alfira here gives level 3 EXP, because the game is using the higher area level instead. There are some exceptions though. Actually, hear me out, I believe this description makes more sense. By default, the game uses the area level of the area an NPC spawns into, except in the following scenarios. A. If the NPC is a higher level. For example, the game uses Kaga's level of 5 because it's higher than the area level of 3 here. B. If there is no area level for the area where they spawned, then of course the game can only use their current level. For example, Tilses spawns here in Zevlor's Cave, which is technically a separate area from the Druid Grove, and thus doesn't have an area level, so the game uses her level of 2 instead. C. If the NPC in question has a level override element in their data. If they do, the game ignores area level and uses their current level. For example, Silver here has a level override element listed, so the game ignores the area level of 3, and he only gives level 2 EXP. Now you might wonder, does the level override being set to 2 mean that Silver always gives level 2 EXP? But that is not the case, which can be confirmed by using console commands to level Silver up to, say, level 5, at which point he gives level 5 EXP. In other words, the number in the level override element doesn't actually seem to mean much. And D. Due to a bug, if you reload at any point on the Nautiloid, the game stops using area level for every NPC for the rest of the game. Yep, you heard that right. You must not reload on the Nautiloid for any reason, or area level just breaks. Yes, this also includes the Commander's Alk fight, and yes, it applies to all difficulties and any type of reload. Even Honor mode if you need to close the game and come back later, because that counts as reloading a save. This affects a whole bunch of NPCs, but to list a few examples, Alfira, who usually gives 20 EXP as discussed before, will only give 10 EXP because she's level 1. Ephron and Lauren, who usually give 40 EXP in the Hag's Lair, will only give 10 EXP because level 1. Philomene and Skickpit, who usually give 75 EXP in the Grymforge, will only give 20 EXP because they're level 3. And quite a few others, but I won't go over all of them here, I'm sure you get the idea. Here's a quick example to show it in action. I use script extender console commands here to pour it out of the Nautiloid to speed things up, but the same thing applies to normal runs as well, of course. I load into the game, pour it out to a waypoint, then to beside Lauren, and you can see that he gives 40 EXP as normal. But the moment that I go back to the save made at the very start of the game, which is equivalent to reloading the save, and repeat the process, Lauren now only gives 10 EXP. For extra clarification, I now have 2 autosaves made just after porting out of the Nautiloid. The first one, as you saw, was made upon porting out of the Nautiloid immediately after loading up the game. This one is still perfectly fine, and I still get 40 EXP from Lauren because in this version of the run, I never reloaded on the Nautiloid. The second save, however, still only gets 10 EXP. To reiterate one final time, this is because this is the save where I reloaded back into the Nautiloid, and now this version of the run is just permanently broken and area level will not be applied to NPCs for the rest of this run. So if you've ever wondered why sometimes you get different EXP from certain NPCs, or if you think the numbers you're getting are different from what I've got on my sheets, reloading on the Nautiloid is likely why. However, unfortunately, I don't know exactly what causes this to happen. I don't have enough data mining know-how to figure out the root issue, I can only tell you how to avoid it. If anyone does know, or is able to figure out why this happens, please let me know, either in the comments here or via the experience discussion thread on the Larian Discord server. So yeah, getting consistent at the Commander Zalk fight is now more important than ever, and I pray Shadowheart lands her commands for you, because you have to be able to do it all in one go. Okay, back to the main topic at hand, NPC EXP. To reiterate, when an NPC spawns, the game uses area level unless the NPC is a higher level, there is no area level, they have a level override, or you reload it on the Nautiloid. One more quick example before we move on though. Findle. He spawns here in the Grove's hidden tunnel, which has an area level of 2, so he gives level 2 EXP. More importantly though, even after he runs into the Druid's Sanctum, which has an area level of 3, as mentioned before, he still only gives level 2 EXP, because his EXP was determined based on where he spawned, not where he was killed. Just wanted to give a quick example of that. However, we're not done yet, because if an NPC levels up during the run for any reason, the game redetermines their EXP and resets it, meaning you can get EXP from them again. In this case, the game uses the same calculations as before, with their old area level as well. In other words, the game does not assign them a new area level when they level up, even if they're in a new higher level area at the time. This can be tested by porting Alfira to the Underdark and using console commands to level her up to level 2. At this point, she's a level 2 NPC in a level 4 area, but knocking her out still gives 20 EXP because the game is still using the Druid Grove's area level of 3. As for NPCs that actually level up during the game that this is relevant to, this list includes Zevlor, Alfira, Bex, Danis, and Damon in the Grove, and Roa, Yurla, and Erna in the Goblin camp. The Strange Ox does level up between acts, however it's not possible to knock it out non-lethally, so you can't double dip on its EXP. Likewise, Roland levels up, but to my knowledge, you also can't double dip on his EXP because attacking him or his siblings in Act 1 causes them to leave, and they won't reappear in Act 2, defeating the purpose. But wait, there's more. There's actually a small list of NPCs in Last Light Inn that level up the first time you port out of or leave Act 2. To my knowledge, they are the only NPCs in the game that do this, so I currently believe it to be a bug. This applies to the 3 Harpers you meet outside Last Light, Harper Lysandra, Harper Caro, and Harper Megan, and then Ceres, Roland, and the Strange Ox. The 3 Harpers and the Strange Ox start at level 5 and give 75 EXP, while Ceres and Roland start at level 4 and give 40 EXP. Upon going back to Act 1 or the Mountain Pass, however, and then re-entering Act 2, you'll find these NPCs have all leveled up to level 6 and given 90 EXP now, meaning you can double dip on all of them. Except for, again, the Strange Ox, who can't be knocked out, so it's recommended to wait until after it levels up to 6 to kill it. To clarify, none of these characters use Last Light Inn's area level because they didn't spawn here. The Harpers spawned just outside Last Light, and the other characters were carried over from Act 1. Ceres as well, who is usually standing right here in the grove, just off stage unless she's actually needed. Alright, that's enough of that section, I swear. Moving on, next is EXP gained from peacefully talking your way through certain encounters in the game. I like to call this Peaceful Resolution EXP. In these cases, you get EXP equivalent to the NPCs in the surrounding area that would normally join a fight if that outcome had occurred. For this reason, this type of EXP can vary depending on how many NPCs are in the area when it's triggered. And I don't mean that this EXP is technically or mathematically equivalent to the NPCs, I mean it is literally their EXP. It's not related to a quest step or anything complicated like that, the game just gives you the EXP as if you'd killed them. Therefore, as you'd expect, killing the NPCs afterwards does not give any EXP. Also, if they were to level up afterwards, you could get EXP from them again, though to my knowledge this doesn't actually happen anywhere in the game normally. And finally, there's Exploration EXP, which is, primarily, the only type of EXP in the game that can scale with your level. The higher level you are, the more EXP you get from entering these areas. This is the main reason for needing a specific route when it comes to optimizing EXP. It is not an exaggeration to say that almost everything in an optimized route is designed around getting the most Exploration EXP possible. But this video isn't about optimizing specifically, so I digress. To show an example, if you were to walk over to this chest near the start of the game at level 2, you'd get 10 EXP. If you waited until you were level 3, you'd get 30 instead. And if you were to put it off all the way until you were level 11, you'd get a whopping 330 EXP. With that said, not all exploration areas scale with level. There are some that have a level override element and thus give a static amount of EXP. For example, the Blighted Village is an exploration area that has a level override of 3 and always gives 60 EXP. And likewise, the Goblin Camp always gives 90. Personally, I don't really consider these true exploration areas since they don't scale and thus you can get them whenever you want. For this reason, they're labeled as interaction on my sheets instead. And let's not forget what makes Exploration EXP the quirkiest EXP of them all, which is that companions not in your party can steal Exploration EXP from you. To elaborate, what I mean is that it's not just you that can walk into an exploration area and get the EXP. It's any NPC in the game that's flagged as a companion. This includes not only characters and pets currently in your party, but also future companions that can be recruited eventually, and any past characters that have been in your party as the game does not remove the companion flag when they leave. And unfortunately, you do not get any EXP when an NPC not currently in your party walks into or simply exists in one of these areas. This causes Exploration EXP to be the largest contributor to the EXP that feels bugged but actually isn't category. This is relevant in the following places. The area surrounding the Roadside Cliffs waypoint, where NPC Gale spawns into at the beginning of the game. The only way to prevent this, and to be able to get this EXP, is by starting the game with Origin Gale in your party, either by playing Gale yourself or having someone else start as him in a multiplayer run. The Risen Road, where NPC Karlach spawns into at the beginning of the game. Exactly like with Gale, this EXP can only be obtained when either you or another player has selected Origin Karlach at the beginning of the game. The entrance to the Druid Grove, where, under normal circumstances, Will walks through after the initial battle to defend the grove. This can be prevented in 3 different ways, the first of which is the same as the last 2 areas, by either you or a friend selecting Origin Will at the start of the game. The second method is just knocking Will out during the fight, and the third method is by creating a blockade using chests, crates, barrels, etc. after the battle. Once the battle finishes, wait for Eredin and his crew to enter the tunnel, then activate turn-based and place down the blockade to stop Will from entering, who conveniently forgets how to jump. At this point, you won't be able to talk to or interact with him, but don't worry, as this is only temporary, and you can recruit him without any issues after defusing Eredin and Zevlor's fight. This area does scale with level, but note that saving it for later means you'll have to find other ways to enter the Druid Grove. Last Light Inn, where Jaheira will sometimes walk into as you are walking up to Last Light for the first time. As you walk up to the area, most of the torches automatically turn on, except for this torch in the middle, at which point the game chooses a seemingly random NPC to walk over and turn it on. If Jaheira is chosen, then she will start walking over to it, and into the exploration area, stealing it from you. Unless you can race her there and get it first. In order to avoid triggering the cutscene and/or getting attacked on your way in, it's recommended to first use invisibility on yourself, then start walking in. As you head in, enter turn-based mode as soon as you see Jaheira appear on your screen. Upon getting closer, she and everything else should freeze in place in turn-based mode, allowing you to dash and/or jump to get there first for the EXP. If Jaheira isn't chosen to light the torch and doesn't start moving, turn-based mode isn't necessary, but better safe than sorry in my opinion. And finally, Moonrise Towers, where both Minthara and Saza usually spawn into. Thus, the two requirements for getting it are 1. Saza must be dead if you freed her from the grove, and 2. If Minthara is alive, then you need to enter from afar with a pet. The reason for Saza needing to be dead is related to what I mentioned before. Any NPC that's ever been in your party is flagged as a companion, and this includes Saza if you escorted her out of the grove. In her case, she loads into Moonrise Towers at the same time that you load into Act 2, stealing this Exploration EXP immediately. Well, only if she's alive, of course. As for Minthara, she only loads into Moonrise Towers when one of your characters walks past either this point or this point. This does not include pets though, thankfully, so they are free to enter and get the EXP without triggering Minthara's arrival. As a side note, entering through the main doors here with a pet does skip the dialogue with the guards and triggers Zealot Kriz to leave, meaning you miss out on 45 EXP, so my personal recommendation is to walk your pet up these vines here and enter the exploration area via this second floor balcony. And that covers all the exploration areas that can be stolen before you get there. With the basics of EXP amounts and some tangents out of the way, I'll move on to cover more EXP that feels bugged but actually isn't. Once again, most of these are solved with the help of SlimX, so shoutouts to him. Gimblebach and his crew are the only interaction in the game where you can get EXP from their dialogue and then also get EXP from killing them after. This is because this interaction is actually a quest step and not peaceful resolution EXP. The step in question is Chapel Bandit Talking, and is part of a group of steps that I call hidden quest steps, because they aren't related to any one quest in particular and are instead just their own individual steps. You can get 80 EXP instead of 35 normally from opening the Harper chest in the Grymforge, so long as you've never entered combat with a Mimic at all during your run so far. This includes the Mimic in Moonrise Towers, by the way. When playing on Honor mode, 2 extra Magma Mephits spawn during the fight with Grym in the Forge. Unlike the other Mephits in the fight that give 75 EXP, these 2 Honor mode only Mephits only give 20 EXP. This is because they're spawned using a character template that has a level override element on it, presumably the same template that the game uses to spawn Mephits for one of Wild Magic Sorcerer's Surges. When starting the assault on Moonrise Towers after freeing the Night Song, you can get 45 EXP for the quest step Assaulted MT, but only if the following requirement is met. One of either Zealot Munish, Adept Nola, Acolyte Dane, or the Warden is alive and able to participate in defending against the assault. Those 4 NPCs are the only ones that matter, and only one of them needs to be alive. After defeating Merkel and porting back to Moonrise, 6 no-name Flaming Fists can spawn to defend the tower, but only if the following conditions are met. 1. Floric was saved in Act 1, so she showed up in Last Light at the start of Act 2. 2. The Night Song was freed. And 3. Last Light was not destroyed, aka Isabel is still alive. Hopefully that answers some questions if anyone was curious about those. As for EXP that is actually just bugged, when waking up Shadowheart on the beach at the start of the game, you normally get 30 EXP from the quest step Recruited Beach. However, you can get 60 EXP instead if you wake her up as a Gith, either by simply being a Gith yourself or using Disguise Self to turn into one, because the game also gives you the quest step Recruited Gith Yankee in addition to Recruited Beach. Moreover, later on you can get another 30 EXP from the step Recruited Lae'zel by inviting Shadowheart to the party while Lae'zel is in it. Logically, I feel like these 3 steps should be mutually exclusive with each other, so I'm labeling them as bugged. In the Goblin camp, there should be 15 EXP for the quest step Nerdy Goblin Sage Got Book. And thanks to SlimX, we know that it is implemented, just not properly. As he points out here, all the info for it is in the files, but the quest update function has its order of operations flipped, so unfortunately it isn't able to trigger or fire properly. Similarly, there should also be 15 EXP for getting branded by Priestess Gut, but this has the exact same issue. The quest update function is flipped, so it doesn't trigger. After successfully defending the grove from Minthara's assault and celebrating with the tieflings, upon re-entering the lower area of the grove, you'll find 4 goblins just sorta hanging out with the druids. I'm labeling them as bugged since I don't believe there's a logical reason for them to be here. There are 4 outcomes to Lady Esther's quest where she asks you to retrieve the Gith Egg. However, the outcome of specifically asking for payment in advance and then giving her an owlbear egg doesn't have an area level, so it gives no EXP, while the other 3 outcomes work just fine. Considering the exact same cutscene plays out when you give her the owlbear egg regardless of if you asked for the payment up front, I'm considering this one an oversight. According to the quest step files, there should be 30 EXP for looting the Dawnmaster's Crest from this pouch in the Crest. Also, no matter how you start the Blood of Lathander quest, the description that this step is associated with always just appears in your quest log, even when you definitely haven't obtained the Crest yet. Thanks to SlimX once again, we know that these steps are implemented, though this time the reason they don't work is not directly obvious. SlimX's current theory is that the game just checks for someone or something to have the Crest, such as the pouch that the Crest starts in. In other words, that pouch has triggered the step and the related EXP long before you get here, which explains why the step description mysteriously appears in your quest log regardless of if you've obtained the Crest or not. This next one isn't related to quest steps, but you can get multiple shadows to spawn from the hollow armor in the morgue under certain conditions. On Honor mode, the most I've been able to spawn so far is 4 shadows. This is done by finishing off the hollow armor with an attack that meets the following requirements. 1 additional shadow spawns if certain attacks are used that deal multiple instances of damage. I have not fully tested all abilities, but I do know that Booming Blade and various smites, such as Thunderous Smite, work. 1 additional shadow spawns if the attacking character has 5 or more lightning charge stacks, triggering the additional 1d8 lightning damage. And 1 additional shadow spawns if the attack deals any fire damage at all. This causes the oil that is constantly spilling out of the armor to ignite, which for some reason spawns an extra shadow. Don't ask me why. So, you can combine all 3 of the above requirements by, for example, equipping the Speedy Light Feat and dashing a few times, then dipping your weapon in fire, then using Booming Blade to finish off the hollow armor. This spawns 1 shadow, as usual, plus 1 for each of the above requirements met, in this case 4 in total. And finally, we have the Justiciars in the Gauntlet of Shar. The gist of it is that there are 3 types of Dark Justiciar that can spawn from the Umbral Tremors in the Gauntlet. However, specifically, only the Soulhunters that are spawned from Tremors do not give any EXP. To make matters worse, the type of Justiciar spawned from Tremors is RNG, meaning the amount of EXP you get from these fights can vary depending on how many Soulhunters decide to spawn. The reason as to why spawned Soulhunters don't give any EXP goes back to the XPReward category from before. SlimX describes it here, but the TLDR is that, for some reason, the devs specifically gave Soulhunters this Dark Justiciar Ranger Summon stats page, where literally the only thing it does is change the Soulhunters XPReward category to 0, so they don't give EXP as a result. Why they did this is a bit of a mystery. With that said, that covers everything I had in mind for this video. Assuming you're still watching, then thanks for your time, and I hope you found it enjoyable and or learned something from it. If you've got questions related to any other EXP found in the first 2 acts, you can either check out my spreadsheets, drop a comment here, or head over to the experience discussion thread I mentioned before. Thanks, and have a good one. Still watching, eh? Alright, if you're that curious, here's a bit more info that didn't fit into the main script. It's going to be quick though, because I'm getting tired of editing this video. There's a few quest steps listed in the quest step files that didn't seem to make it into the final game. These 2 about enthralled fishermen on the beach at the start of the game. These 4 related to activating the fairy circles around Ethel's lair. And this 1 for convincing the spiders in the Grymforge to serve Lolth. Slim X was kind enough to do some digging for these and found, well, nothing. There's just nothing in the game files that references these steps, like there was for Piddle's book, Guts' brand, or the Lathander crest. And that's it, for real this time. See you later.